So thank you so much to our panel. Thank you, Rob, for moderating. This was fascinating. As you know, we are now going to switch into our next panel. It was very interesting to kind of hear the advice from our panelists and kind of, be ready, go with the flow. But we also thought you might all wonder about, how do I do that? How do I get ready to go with the flow? And so we asked an esteemed panel of CIOs and CTOs across Harvard to advise you on how they have handled these types of challenges in the past. Because guess what? This is not the first one that we have gone through, as our panelists outlined. So let me first welcome Jim Waldo, the Gordon McKay Professor of Practice of Computer Science and Chief Technology Officer of the Harvard John A. Paulson School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, to the podium, who is going to introduce his panel and moderate it. Thank you, Jim.
That's premature. So, we've got a great panel coming up. First, we have Erica Bradshaw, Chief Technology Officer for HUIT. Third of that name. Next up, we have Pratike Patel, CIO at the law school. Imagine what it's like arguing with his customers. And finally, we have Deborah Scott, the Chief Information Officer of the Harvard Medical School. Also a tough set of customers. I will point out in the program, I am listed as the CIO at SEAS. I am not, I'm the CTO. I sent that correction in, but they were probably using Exchange, so never got it. Too soon? Too soon, sorry. All right, so let's start off with, I'm going to ask in order, surrounded by old dead white guys. I feel right at home. 2/3 of the way there. Coming soon, guys. Anyway, yeah, you're not. That's okay. But so let's start off with everybody taking about a 2-minute, give us some background on how you got to where you are. Let's start with Pratike.
Okay. Can you hear me? So I actually was a mechanical engineer for 90 days. That was my background. My entire life, I thought I'd be around big equipment. And so I used to design diaper machines. And then one day I had a couple of college friends that went into computers and said, why don't you come do this? And I've been doing that for the last 25 years, roughly. The transition started with working in the legal industry. So I work with big law firms around the country and around the world. And then I came to Harvard Law School, where we produced most of the people I worked with, and I've enjoyed it for the last 17 years.
Erica.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? There we go. I'm Erica Bradshaw. I'm the university CTO. I think the way that I think about my role here, we'll talk about the current one and we'll work our way backwards, just in really 2 big buckets of responsibility. The first being, as CTO, thinking about how do we think through common designs, technology strategies? How do we create and convene people around these things so that we're solving collective problems, challenges together? So that's one big area. And then I have to flip my brain on most days to think about services and thinking about operations for really key critical technologies that we have at the university. So things like the network and identity and access management and these big common platforms that connect us all together. So I have enjoyed this tension that's going between strategy and operations and finding the balance of that dance since April of this year. So I'm new to the role. I've been at Harvard now for 10 years, and to me that's really hard to think about when I'm reflecting, but as Clara had mentioned, I've seen quite a few technology shifts as we've been working through the past 10 years and thinking about ways that things have transformed at the university. Everything from the implementation of Harvard Key to migrating to the cloud and closing the data centers that we had on campus. And then most recently thinking about technology consulting and how do we think about providing strategic assessments out for people that helps them really understand and drive and get to the heart about what technology can do as a partner. My background, I came from state government. I worked in the Commonwealth for 10 years in various positions. And before that, I worked as an IT consultant. So thank you. Nice to be here.
And Deb.
Good morning. Like Pratike and Jim, I started out as an engineer, studied electrical engineering, and a couple of years into my first industry job, I realized that I needed to seize an opportunity, and I think I've been seizing opportunities ever since. And that opportunity was, which one of the junior engineers here wants to figure out how to spec out a computer-aided design system, purchase it, set it up, install a network, figure out how to do system administration, and then teach all the engineers that need to take the slide rules out of their pockets and learn how to use a CAD system because we need to design an integrated circuit. And I'm like, I'll do that. And so I had to learn everything. And it was a great opportunity that the company that I worked for really needed someone to do that. And I saw it as an opportunity where a lot of my colleagues thought of it as like, that would be just such a step down. Like, I want to just do design. I'm like, well, okay, you do you, I'll do me. And so I wanted to seize that opportunity. And I think every one of the disruptions that were mentioned earlier, they can be looked at as a difficulty, a challenge, something that is potentially negative, or as an opportunity to really understand how to change the way that your whole industry looks at doing work and the way that you build a team to do that work. So I went from being in an aerospace company to being in a networking company to a software company. And then after about 20 years of that, I went to higher ed. And I've been doing the same thing, but helping higher ed to adapt to new technologies as they come along. And AI is one of the things that we're looking at now, and AI in medicine. So it's been an exciting journey.
Good. And my background, which is somewhat odd compared to some of the others. I have been at Harvard full-time for about 14 years, splitting my time between, I was the first Harvard CTO, but then started doing more teaching, even though I'd been teaching at Harvard for 30 years. I figured out this morning, talking with Erica, you talk about thinking, how can you be here for 10? I've been teaching here for 30. Prior to Harvard, I was in industry. So when the previous panel was talking about the people who do Python and Java and COBOL, that was me. And my educational background, my PhD and most of my other degrees are in philosophy. Never taken a course in computer science, so I'm not an engineer. But got a quick course in economics after getting my PhD, and so started writing code because I like doing things like eating. And so things have turned out, shall we say, unexpected, but rather nicely. So first question. From your perspective and reflecting on the past couple of years, pandemics, AI, things like that, what new opportunities have arisen for information technology, specifically at Harvard? Now let's go in the opposite direction on this one. Deb, you start first.
Well, we've been having the conversation around AI, but I think that the big opportunities from my perspective have been, how do we do and enable our brilliant faculty who are innovating on the edge? How do we enable them to do what they've always done, which is the scientific method and discovery in biomedical science, but to do it in a world where now we're dealing with everything at scale? The amount of data and the rate of data that is coming off the kinds of instruments that they're bringing into the laboratories now is just off the scale. And so we are working with the faculty at the edge there to help them understand, we help each other understand, how are we going to capture the data at this rate, and how are we going to store it and manipulate it and bring it to the point where they can do the analysis they want. And that may be in any number of places. It could be in GPUs and workstations, it could be on our high performance computing system, or it could be that they need to burst it to the cloud. So that ability to be platform independent and to be able to scale wherever it needs to be to do the kind of analysis they need to do is just amazing. And it has really accelerated over the last 5 years that I've been here.
Cool, thank you. Erica.
I think given all of the change with the pandemic, there's so many things that we could touch on here, but what struck me the most was Harvard historically hasn't just been a learning institution, but it's a place for all of us. And with the pandemic, that place had to be extended to a digital presence, a digital campus. And because of that, and because of the changes and the way that needed to be extended, we all, to some degree, fundamentally had to change. And we've had to change the way we've worked, the change we support people at the university, the change we've had to support faculty differently, we've had to reimagine the way that we even work together. So with that whole network of change, I think it took so much momentum, so much collaboration, so much energy from all of us that I'm really thinking through how do we keep that momentum going while balancing the ability to give people rest. And rest is an important thing that I think for IT that we really need to think about, because we heard about AI, we heard about all of this emerging technology that's coming, we heard about all these new opportunities, but I think if we don't take that time to think about how do we learn from what we just did, re-energize ourselves to be able to respond, and then start really thinking about very creatively, how do we bring in technologies that are useful? How do we, as technologists, make things simple for people? I think there's plenty of opportunities to think about these complex systems, networks, concepts, tools, and they're everywhere. It's exploded. So I really would say that we have a huge opportunity ahead of us to try to navigate that for people. And really, at the heart of it, it's making sure that change is accessible to the people that we serve at the university.
Pratike.
So at the law school, we don't have some of the challenges that Deborah has at the medical school. We don't have big data. We don't have a lot of research. What we do have is a lot of collaboration. We bring in a lot of folks from around the world. What the pandemic taught the IT department was we put all these tools in for many years, but we never really used those. But when we started having to work together remotely, we started seeing the shortcomings of, I would say, the user experience that our faculty and our students had to deal with. And so a new lens has been put on the technology that we deploy for the faculty and students at the law school because we're using the technology. So what used to seem like it's just 3 clicks of a button, why is that so hard for a faculty member to be able to do this? Our staff struggled with it, they relook at it, and now you're starting to see simplification of a lot of the experiences around the tools that we have, because as part of the shift back to campus, we have a lot of remote workers. So we need to learn on how to be very efficient with each other, and that is now being also replicated in our classrooms, it's being replicated in our clinics. And so I think what we're seeing post-pandemic is that the way our faculty and students work with researchers around the world, we're learning to work with our colleagues. And so we're trying to have user experience in mind and putting that within the way we deploy technology.
Yeah, so for my part, I will point out that, imagine what the pandemic would have been like without the internet. And the world would just not be the same. And Harvard had to change at a pace that is really uncomfortable for Harvard. Yeah. I have often said that if Harvard had decided to see about putting like 20% of their classes online, it would have taken 5 years. There would have been untold numbers of faculty committees. It probably would have cost millions of dollars. And the conclusion was, we can't do it. And instead, we did it in 10 days. And that was in part because of the infrastructure done by the people in this room, in part by the overall infrastructure that we have built as technologists over the past 40 years. But it was a different world, and it had a larger effect on the way faculty teach than anything in the 30 years I've been teaching here. I think AI is going to be the same as we try to figure out what does it mean to have, just as we had to, as faculty members, we had to change the way we conducted classes, where you couldn't ask pop questions that could be answered by Googling, right? And a lot of faculty tried to deal with that by saying no computers in your classroom, but that was the wrong way to deal with it. In the same way, we are no longer, as faculty, going to be able to determine competence by asking people to write a simple essay about a subject. So we're going to have to think of something else. That's all for the good. But all of this means that the change is going to be happening very, very rapidly in an environment where we have prized stability over innovation. And I think that's going to have to change over the next years. All right, question 2. By the way, we're going to give you guys a chance to ask questions. I have extras, but I'm going to go through a couple of them. And then if you don't ask, I will start making shit up. So, sorry, start making things up. As a senior, you could call it hallucinating, but we won't. As a senior leader in IT, you've been through multiple technology shifts and disruptions. How have you navigated them so successfully throughout your career? Let's start with Erica on this one.
When I hear the word change, it brings up a lot of feelings for me. So I think we do ourselves a disservice when we think about change as something that happens as a result of something external, right? This thing happens, we change, this thing happens, we have to change. And for me, when you think about it that way, it's almost like an imposition on somebody, and that level of anxiety comes up, and you kind of start getting those feelings like, oof, all the defenses come up when it comes to change, when it happens that way. I think as an IT leader, our job is to really think about change as something that we should calibrate for people, and something that we should be accountable for, thinking through the ramifications and bringing people's comfort levels down as much or up as much as possible to be able to rise to the task. A few things, like I have a Rolodex of kind of one-liners that have stuck with me when it comes to leading change that I'll share a couple with you today. The first thing I say to any of my teams when we're thinking through something new that's going to have a big implication on someone: suspend your disbelief. It's just getting into that mindset where you're like, okay, there's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't do something. There's a lot of reasons. You can find thousands of reasons why something's not going to work. Your job as a leader is to pull out the whys. Why should we be doing this? How can this be done? Hearing those voices in the room. And the best solutions at the end of the day are really integrative. You're thinking about the risk, you're thinking about the possibility, but you have to make space for that, and I would encourage you to think through how to bring that information out from your team. I also think with change, it's okay to be wrong. I don't think there's a playbook for this. You're learning as you're going along, you're trying new ideas, you're testing them. Fail fast, I think, is something that I've kept in the back of my mind. Try, iterate, fail, learn, move on, right? Don't get stuck, because it's easy to get stuck when things aren't going well. And then the last one I'll leave you with is this. You can have the most beautiful plans, eloquent designs, your technical implementation is flawless, it's on point, everybody's happy. Except it wasn't experienced the way that you needed it to be, that the users didn't experience it how it should have. And that is the hallmark of what makes a successful change. It's how people see themselves in it, how they feel about it, how they're experiencing, how they're using it. And so I would say my advice to you would be, at the heart of all of this is people, and you really need to spend the time communicating, thinking, planning, engaging, collaborating. Make time for that, because that is what's going to help you as you're going down this road.
Let's see you follow that, Pratike.
I'm not following that. Everything she said, I clear it. No.
Yeah.
So embracing change, the first is going to be the way we embrace it with our attitudes. It's going to happen to us one way or another. So we can either fight it or we can embrace it, and we can make sure that we bring in folks that have a diverse set of backgrounds. The folks that are the pessimist on one side, the folks that are the most optimistic people on the other side, and figure out a way forward. And I tell my team a rule of, we're going to try to bend, but we're not going to break. We are going to get very uncomfortable with things, but the goal is we don't want to go off the cliff. And then at the end of it, we have to learn from whatever that change was. Sometimes it's going to go right, sometimes it's going to go wrong. And when it does go wrong, can we learn something from it that we're going to do differently next time, so that there is a chance that we might not make the same mistake?
Deb.
Okay, I'm going to quote Winston Churchill. And a pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, and an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. And I like to be an optimist, and every time there is something thrown in our path, I feel it's my job to identify the opportunities that are there. Even though it's difficult, even though it's challenging and hard and it's a stretch, the opportunities are what are going to give us a path forward for our constituents and also for our own careers. And staying ahead of the changes and seeing them come into the organization and how we learn and adapt is where it gives people a career path and an opportunity to learn new things. And I must say, during the pandemic, it happened too fast, for too long, for a sustained crisis mode for way too long. But once we got through it, a lot of people in my team realized they had started doing different work, higher level work, more complex work, and they were ready for new opportunities and were ready to change their career path within the department because they had been through so much. But what we needed to do after going through that was to take a step back and to think about, being resilient is how you bounce back from a set of challenges and stresses, but we need the ability to recover and then to contemplate what we just went through and see, reflect on what did that change we just went through, how did that impact my work and the work for the people that I support. And so that it's part of the job as a leader is to help people to see the opportunities and to understand that there's hope that we're going to get through the difficult times, and then what we learn is going to propel us forward.
So I'm going to give the same advice to everybody out here that I give to my students. Having spent a lot of time in industry, I get a lot of computer science students coming into my office hyperventilating early on in their senior year about, what's my career going to be? And the best piece of advice I ever heard was given by one of my colleagues at Sun, who pointed out in a talk, engineers don't have careers, they have projects. And you do a project while it's interesting, and when it stops being interesting, you look around for another project. And then you do that one. And after you've done, 6 to 10 projects, you can look back and go, that was an interesting career. But you don't pre-plan a career. Careers are things that you had, not things that you plan out having, because nobody can plan in the environment that we're in. Nobody could think of all the changes that they're going to see. I feel pretty good about predicting technology with about a 20% accuracy loss every year. So that means 5 years from now, I'm doing science fiction. So, how do you predict on that? You stay active and looking around. One of the nice things about being in a place like this, there are smart people around who are inventing the future that we'll be living in. William Gibson, my favorite phrase from William Gibson, the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed. So find the places where most of the future is happening and learn from that and be ready for whatever happens. Because, I was sure I was going to end up, if I was really lucky, as a philosophy professor at Harvard. I got part of it right, but not the other part. So just be open to things that are going to change and keep your ears open to what's going to be interesting. Other side story on this, years and years ago when I was in industry, I was leading a research group, and we needed to change the implementation language we were using because the language that we had been using was just going to die. It was clear that it was. So we looked around and we found this experimental language that looked pretty good for what we were going to be doing. And I wrote a memo to the head of the lab saying it's okay for us to use this language because we're a research group and don't need to use something that's commercially viable. Well, that language at the time was called Oak. About a month later, the name got changed to Java. And what we thought was a commercially unviable language exploded on us in ways that are pretty amazing. We had no idea that that was going to happen, but it changed the lives of everybody that was in that group because we were doing that. May happen to you, who knows? You may get lucky. All right, what are you most excited concerning the future? I mean, other than like having one now. We'll go back to Pratike, and we'll go this way this time.
So the two items are, I mean, AI through, what the first panel discussed. Personally, I've been trying to use ChatGPT in every manner of my day-to-day. I think I took the set of questions you were going to ask today, Jim, and I put it through ChatGPT just to see what it would come up with. But I've been playing around with ChatGPT, trying to figure out how are we going to embrace this thing within our department. Trying to see how do we really get to efficiencies, playing in a really safe place. So more around day-to-day routine stuff. Excel, I do a lot of Excel work, using ChatGPT to tell me how to write my Excel macros. A lot of efficiencies gained there. On a personal front, I don't have what Rob did. I tried using ChatGPT to figure out how to answer my wife and my teenage daughter. And when they asked me questions, that didn't go well. It actually told me, you should not use me to respond to your spouse and your children, but then said, if you are going to respond, here's the answer. So the answers were great, by the way. The other side of it is IoT. IoT, especially during COVID, I really embraced that. Started using that at home to basically make myself more efficient. So going around the house, it turns off all my lights, managing everything outdoors. But now we're bringing it into the office. So how do we use IoT to start looking at our own internal spaces, how to become more efficient as an administrative institution. So we use it in the facilities area, we're using it to manage our buildings. We're using it to determine when you don't have events in classrooms, how do you go ahead and turn off the lights? How do you change the HVAC? So how does IoT start helping us from a climate perspective, from an efficiency standpoint? How do we, as we grow our campus bigger, how do we make sure we don't need maybe more people, but smarter people that are using these tools in a safe way? I see Michael up front, in a very safe way so that we don't have our systems get compromised. So it's really those two areas between AI and ChatGPT. AI and IoT.
Erica.
I think with this one, what I'm most excited about is in one word, the unknown. And I think it hits, obviously there's an AI undertone to it, but I just think about all of the use cases that haven't emerged yet about how people are going to use this technology, especially now that it's in the hands of so many of us, and the barriers to being able to use it, I wouldn't say effectively, but be able to use it have become so much lower. So I think I'm excited to see, to Pratike's point about the efficiencies that will be created, about how to use technology as like your personal assistant almost, to help you both at work and at home. I'm excited to see about the content that's going to come out of this, and you can see today about image generation and content generation. There's just so much more data that's exploding. I wonder, and I'm curious about the impact that's going to have on all of us as the data kind of ticks up again in terms of the volume of things we all need to care about and manage, but I think that's a sidebar. And then, I'm just excited to, kind of with the creative promise that we have as a university, as an IT organization, to really kind of keep our radar out and surf the horizon to find where those use cases are and to offer those ideas. Because you don't need to have these deep technical backgrounds, and I think that's what brings an advantage for all of us, that we have the technology bend, so we can start commenting on where this is going to be helpful, start advising people in different ways on how things could be used. And it's exciting. It's exciting what's gonna come.
Deb, here at the med school, there's got to be some stuff that's interesting over there.
There's so much interesting at the med school. So there's two things. One is I'm very excited about the innovations in medical practice that is going to happen by using AI in medicine. And one of our faculty chairs, Zach Kohani, is the New England Journal of Medicine AI editor-in-chief. And he and the faculty are working on that leading edge of how do you think about using AI in patient care. And if you think about the ability for a physician to have your genetic sequence data available to them as they look at that for markers for disease while they're talking to you about your symptoms in a way that would be more efficient and also allow you to have a conversation. I mean, there's some advances that need to happen, but that's possible now that the genetic sequencing is getting faster and faster, and you're able to get a quick turnaround and think about how do you use AI to go out and crawl through all of the available genetic sequences in humanity that are available to look for the markers of disease. So this is what our faculty are working on, and so we have the opportunity to support them and work with them and understand, like, okay, wow, okay, how does that impact the kind of computing environments we need to provide for you? How do we secure it? I mean, also if you're looking at any patient data, which we do have patient data that we look at across healthcare payer databases, et cetera, where our faculty are looking for this kind of information, we have to secure it in a very rigorous and government compliant way. And so when we look at using things like AI, we have to do it with a captive tool that is exposing the data that we have in control within our environment. And so the other thing that I want to mention is that because we have about 10,000 faculty that are hospital clinicians in the Longwood medical area, they are in a position to be teaching our students in their hospitals. Their elective courses are in the hospitals where some of these practices are going to begin to occur. And we have been asked to work on a project where we can use technology to allow us to search through and find where is something being taught in the curriculum. And if it is being taught in the hospital by a faculty member that is using a new technique, how do we capture that and make that available? It's part of our accreditation that we need to be able to do this. So we're going to be meeting soon with some industry experts to try to understand how do we bring in a captive AI tool to be able to crawl through all the information we have on our curriculum, but also that is held in some of these hospital systems. And so I'm going to need to be working with my colleagues in the hospitals to understand, like, okay, how can we share data across boundaries but keep it safe within our domains? So it's a pretty complex problem. It's not going to be fast. It's going to take years, maybe decades, to get to the point. But we start small. Start with the presenting problem, the one thing that needs to be automated, and then it can grow from there. And I don't think you can't solve something like that on all at once. You have to find people that are our faculty who are already collaborating together across different boundaries and understand how to enable their work to happen in a meaningful way that can be replicated across different areas.
So I'm going to talk about short-term, medium-term, and long-term excitements that I have, because I have attention deficit disorder, so there are a lot of things that excite me. The sort of short-term is the impact that the tools like Copilot, ChatGPT are going to have on our ability to more rapidly produce code. So while Pratike was asking ChatGPT to answer the questions that I was going to ask him, I was using Copilot to refactor some utility code that I have. And it's actually pretty nice. Sometimes it comes up with things that I go, really? But other times it generates pretty good code. And what this is going to mean to the expected productivity of people who are writing code, the barrier to entry of automating things is going to go way down, and I think that's going to be exciting. Medium term, I think we are going to be, I'm excited and also challenged about notions around privacy, especially as the world becomes more and more imbued with notions around big data and AI. And what does that notion of privacy mean? One of the reasons it was great to see Michael Tran-Duff join us at Harvard is he really worries about privacy. But I think we're going to probably, my prediction is we are going to change the way we think about privacy from the way we think about it now, which is limitations on the collection of information. I think that is over. There are no limitations on the collection of information, and instead start thinking about how we ensure privacy by mechanisms of regulating how the data is used. And that's going to be a long time, very difficult and conceptually thorny set of issues to go through. But I'm excited to do it because I think we have to. The longer term, even than that, I think, is the intersection of what has been the development of technology, whether it be digital or biotechnology, and questions around ethics and the humanities themselves. And I'm excited about this because we are at a place that has the combination of talents in those areas that is unmatched any place in the world. Being at the top liberal arts university, arguably the top liberal arts university in the world, lets us combine the philosophy and the legal and the policy and the technology and the medical technology groups together. They currently don't spend that much time talking to each other. I used to tell my students my background was a cautionary tale. Now it looks like I actually knew what I was doing because all of these issues are coming together. And how we advance this technology in a way that is respectful of the core values of humanity, and more importantly, how we teach our students to do that as well, I think is going to be a challenge over the next coming set of decades. All right, now it's your turn to ask questions, or I'm going to ask one that Erica wrote up that will break everybody's buzzword bingo card. So somebody ask a question. Raise it. Are there mics out there?
I will come to you if you raise your hand.
All right. Remember, if you don't, I start making. Never.
Good morning. Okay, thank you very much. Coming up on almost 26 years at Harvard in IT, I've found from my own experience that it's brought out of me mentoring and sharing and teaching over the years with my colleagues and customers and partners. And I've always wondered if that is just an element of me or whether that's the greater institution where teaching and learning is our primary product deliverable. It's probably both. So the question is, I mean, obviously, Jim, as a professor, teaching is a large part of your role here at Harvard. But for Erica, Deborah, and Pratike, I'm curious, what element in your positions, in your careers at Harvard has been teaching and mentoring? And do you have any examples of where your teaching in your roles, either current or past, have good examples to bring?
Somebody go.
I'll go. So part of what I've learned about our roles as leaders came from my first mentor. I was in college as a mechanical engineer, and I had an intern. And I had all these college classes where you had to do lots of analysis. And I had my mentor tell me something very simple. Basically, I forget now for a second. But basically told me don't overthink it. And once he did that, it just clicked for me. And as I started going through my career, I reflect back on this guy, Kevin, and his words that he gave me and how it had such an impact on me. So when I started getting to positions where I could mentor and help grow people, I started doing the same thing. And so before I got to Harvard, we had a lot of high school interns, college interns, people that were in the first, second, third years of their career. And so I find myself spending more time with them on a day-to-day basis, helping them grow, because if I can invest a little bit of time helping them, guide them, and just nudge them in the right direction, I will get more in the long term from them. It's kind of like the multiple effect. If I spend 2 hours with them, I will probably see 20 hours of their growth. And I think that's what drives me day to day here at the law school. We have folks that are right out of college. We have folks that have been doing this for 30 years. And in my role, I probably spend most of my time with the most junior employees in the department, because if I get them to start seeing technology and embracing it and thinking about how they want to think about their careers, I'll get the biggest bang for the buck with those employees over the long term.
I think one of the things that's important as you're thinking about sponsoring people, mentoring people, sharing information with people is really to provide the opportunity. And it seems so simple, but just having access to have the conversation, to be in the room, to work on interesting assignments, and to be able to flex between different topic areas. That's something that I've benefited from being at Harvard, just being able to run the gamut of different IT projects, assignments. And I think that's something that as a leader, just how do you recreate that experience for somebody, and how do you do it at scale? And so I think there's some opportunity there to think about how to formalize some of that going forward, but it's really important just to make sure those opportunities are available.
Similarly, I've done a lot of mentoring in my career. I try to mentor as many people as I can, and I have had a lot of opportunity to work throughout the decades with various levels of people where I've helped them to see the potential that they have, that they may not even recognize in themselves. And then it's been really rewarding to see them realize that they do have the potential, and with some coaching and regular mentoring have been able to achieve a lot of really great things. And so I've done both formal and informal mentoring, both within my department for my own staff, as well as across in other areas, and formally with the Women in Technology group here. And I find it just very rewarding to help others recognize their potential and grow. But I haven't done formal teaching. I know a lot of CIOs do teach. I know Claire does, as well as others teach formally in programs, and that hasn't been my gift. but I really, really enjoy the one-on-one mentoring and teaching.
So the thing I'll add, even though I do a lot of sort of classic teaching, probably 2/3 of my time is as a professor, and the other third is CTO. But we tend to think, and in many ways, a place like this encourages us to think of teaching as a top-down thing. And that's the wrong way to think about it. Teaching can be top-down, but the most effective teaching is side-to-side, or even bottom-up. And so any of you in this room that does not think of yourself as both a teacher and a student, you're in the wrong place. When we started edX years and years ago, I remember talking to the dean of Harvard College saying, what is this going to do to our brand? Well, and my first thought was, there's nothing we can do to our brand. It's so good, it'll stay around forever. We said, what is the value of a Harvard education if we're giving away our classes? And I pointed out the value of a Harvard education are the students that we select to come to Harvard, that we bring these really smart kids together. We put them in close proximity for 4 years. We ask them interesting questions and give them enough adult supervision to keep the Lord of the Flies thing from happening. That's the value of a Harvard education. And they educate each other. And in the same way, you should be educating each other and being educated by each other. I learn from my students way more than they learn from me. I don't tell them that because they want me to pay tuition, but that's just how this works. And so all of you should think of yourselves as teaching at any time, micro teaching, macro teaching, mentoring, or just listening, brainstorming. All of those things are forms of teaching that will enrich the entire community, and that's what we're here to do. That's what this institution is about. So I'm glad to hear that you're already doing it. Do more of it. That's all I can say. Other questions? Somebody? I will pull out the Erica question. Okay, somebody's there. Good. Saved.
Right. I can't see.
Thank you.
Can we find anybody less accessible to ask the next question?
I was going to add thank you. That will add some steps if you're in a step competition. HLS, we're in a step competition, so it will be great. I have two questions, and I will ask it, and you pick it up. Which one do you want to answer? Mark Zuckerberg saying in our commencement a few years ago that us, referring to Harvard community, generate technology, and that was our purpose. But that is not anymore because we are changing so many people's lives that we also, part of our purpose now is helping to find a new purpose for those that the technology is affecting them. And my question goes to how that applies to your teams, because we just talk about artificial intelligence and how do we keep it flexible. But when you are single, it's easy to be flexible. When you have partners and kids, as a group, being flexible is not that easy. I cannot imagine how it is at big departments as the ones as you have. And my other question is about how we have changed. We have talked a lot about artificial intelligence, and in the past, we put a framework, a legal framework, to protect us from the government collecting a lot of data. But now, in the last 2 years, everyone is turning around and saying, oh my God, the private sector has too much data. What are we going to be doing? What is the framework? I don't expect that the government is going to do much because they don't understand, and many people don't understand what is going on with artificial intelligence. But however, us, as academia or part of an academic institution, what can we do to protect us? Not to protect us, to generate responsible technology within our institution. Thank you.
Who wants to start?
Jim?
You're the philosopher.
All right, so I'll go to the second question first. I mean, the first question, which, as I understood it, is, well, you know, it's fine to be flexible, but we also have to be secure. It's by being flexible that you are secure. You know, your job is going to change out from under you. You better be able to change with it, or find. And again, another story. Sorry, I'm old guy, so I have lots of stories. One of the earlier companies I worked at got acquired by another company that I worked at probably longer than I should have. But I had a group of very good engineers. One of the managers from the acquiring company came into this group of engineers and said, well, the good news is you have job security. You'll always have a job with us, even though it might not be interesting. And the lead engineer from this group got up and said, oh no, you don't understand. Our notion of job security is we can get a better one in a couple of weeks. What are you going to do to keep us? Now that was a different attitude, by the way. Within 2 weeks, all of those engineers had left to get better jobs. If you don't have the skills that let you have that could lead you to a better job, and this is part of the projects, not careers, you should start working on getting those skills, because that, A, it's fun, and B, that's your notion of security. Sorry, that's the way the world is. So, second question, how do we deal with the amount of data that is acquired? Well, as I started to say, I think it's not going to be around collection, because if you think about the amount of data that is available and collected about each and every one of us all the time, it's huge, right? I used to ask my students if they would be comfortable carrying around a device that would broadcast their location with them 24 hours, their location 24 hours a day. And they all said, of course, no. And then asked them how many had cell phones. And they would, now they actually know that with a cell phone, they're being tracked all the time. You think of it as a cell phone. By the way, when was the last time you made a telephone call on this thing you call a phone? It's not a phone, it's a sensor cluster and networked device. So all of that data is being gathered. How it gets used is the important thing, right? And I think the pandemic pointed this out, right? We had discussions at Harvard. Can we do location tracking at a fine enough scale that we could do contact tracing if we were to allow the students back Turned out it was much harder than we thought with the technology then. We could probably do it now. But would you find that a privacy violation if we just did this for contact tracing? And I think most of us have an intuition that that would be okay. Public health, the greater good, the communitarianism, we could have that argument, but it's not obviously a privacy violation. Then one of my colleagues in the faculty said, oh, and think of all the research we could do on the data that we gather about our students. It's like, no. So here, questions like data retention, right? If you're going to collect all that data, how long do you keep it, right? You get very different notions on data retention if you talk to somebody who's a privacy advocate than if you talk to a university archivist, right? One says, get rid of it as soon as you can. The archivist said, no, never. These are issues that we're going to have to think through as we, because the alternative is don't carry your cell phone. I say that in my privacy course, and the students get visibly nervous. So, anybody want to add on to this?
Well, I'll add something onto it, and I'll go back to the medical context. First, do no harm, and second, the North Star of the physicians that I've listened to in this AI conversations are saying, ultimately, it's do what is benefiting the patient.
Yes.
And so you can extrapolate that to your student. Only do what is benefiting the student. We're not here to do anything but the most ethical thing. And I think Harvard can be a leader in all of our different areas about in our discipline. How do you do that so that you're doing good and you're doing it with the ethical motivation to benefit the subject, that whether it's the student or the patient or the legal client or any of us in IT. I mean, we want to be the beacon for truth and ethics, and how we interpret and how we behave in terms of how we handle information and data that's entrusted to us is going to be seen as an example to the world, whether we like it or not. Harvard is always viewed that way, and I think it's really important for us to understand that and realize that, and work our best to do the right thing in the most ethical way we can.
I think we've touched on a lot of the points on this one. I would just say that being good stewards, right? I think that's what I'm hearing from both Jim and from you, Deborah, about thinking through and talking to our teams about what it means to be a good steward of the university's data, and making sure we're working in partnership with security, we're keeping current on the skills we need. As IT professionals, we have a side responsibility to apply security practices to what we're doing, and just making sure that we keep current with that expertise and apply it to what we do on a day-to-day.
So the only thing I'll add is historically we've only thought about data and security, but now we got a triangle of data, security, and privacy, which is one of the reasons why we have a privacy officer. It's going to make our lives a little more challenging, more three-dimensional. But as we collect more and more data, it's not just going to be, did we secure it? Did we understand exactly what was the purpose of that data? How do we use it the right way, especially in IT? People assume we can give everyone access to all the data, but that's where privacy is going to start falling in.
And so as the chair, I am going to abuse the power of the chair and have the last word and on at least this particular topic, which is, it would be wonderful if we could give people a hard and fast rule on this one. But there isn't one yet. We have not yet figured this out. I don't think we will, right? One of the rules of thumb I give to my students is if people have been thinking about this since Plato, you're not going to solve it. Because really smart people have been thinking about it for a long time. But in this case, while we can't give a hard and fast rule, sometimes you just have to think about it. So we'll leave you with that. Sometimes in your job, you just have to think. With that, I would like to thank the participants here and thank all of you. And one word, lunch. Enjoy.